Truma, makers of the combi heater and iNet system, are proud to sponsor Practical Caravan TV.
Welcome back to Practical Caravan TV, and we're in the depths of the rainforest. No, not really, I'm in Manchester. We're here for the Caravan and Motorhome Show at Event City, and now let's check out some more vans. The Knaus Star Class range was relaunched last year as part of a concerted attempt by the German manufacturer to gain a foothold in the UK market. And now we have this. It's the new Star Class 690. It's a twin axle featuring the popular transverse island bed layout. And it's a fine looking thing, I think you'll agree. I particularly like some of the detailing of it. At the front there, that badge rotates out of the way to gain access to the handle for the front locker. It's a really classy touch. It's also loaded with equipment. If you like to spend a lot of time on your awning, you'll love this van. We've got a gas barbecue point, we've got a TV socket and 230 volt point, and an awning warmer, a detail that's fast disappearing on flagship vans as a result of the universal adoption of Aldi wet central heating. But because this van has a Truma system with blown air, it's an easy fit. Take a look at this weight plate down here. It says that this van weighs in at 2 tons. Now that's a hell of a lot, but actually it includes a massive 380 kilo payload, which means that you can fit options such as air conditioning and this rather fine motorhome style awning without worrying about having enough payload for all your clothes and shoes. You can choose to downgrade that weight plate to 1900 kilos if you're worried about the size of tow car that you need, but who would want to do that when you've got all this space to play with? This van is simply enormous. It's 8 foot 2 inches wide, which translates into a fantastically spacious feeling interior. One thing that isn't so spacious, however, is this lounge. Now, you can opt to have a front chest here in place of this wraparound seating, but I'd be inclined to stick with this layout because otherwise it's going to be pretty snug for any more than 2. It is, however, very comfortable, particularly with this optional leather upholstery, which is a 1500 quid option, but rather a nice thing to have. And with this central seat, one person on either side of you, 3 of you can sit back and watch the TV mounted on its special stand just in front of you. Now, the only thing in here that I can really complain about, apart from the slightly snug sofas, is the lack of overall storage space. Because the sofas aren't that long, they don't provide a massive amount of space beneath, and there aren't any access flaps either. There are 2 overhead lockers, but again, they're quite small. But as we'll find out later, there is a lot more storage available further back in the van. At night, the lounge turns into a decent sized double, although it will be reduced by opting for that central chest. The majority of people who are going to stump nearly £30,000 for this Star Class 690 are likely to spend a lot of time in it, be that on lengthy holidays or indeed on seasonal pitches. And chances are they'll value this fridge. It's fantastic. We've got a separate freezer and a huge fridge beneath. There's a good sized kitchen on the other side too. We've got dual fuel hob with a hot plate and 3 gas burners and a good sized separate oven and grill beneath. There isn't a vast amount of worktop, but there is a glass lid over the sink and built-in drainer that you can use for extra preparation space. And one thing that's really nice is this cutout, which means that you don't have to move the tap every time you lift up that lid. There's a reasonable amount of storage space in here. I particularly like this domestic style drawer. It's absolutely massive. Loads of room for all your cutlery in there. One quibble, well, this microwave, it really is very high up. I know people think that I complain about this too much, but frankly, my wife wouldn't be able to reach it. As we move back, we come to the first of 3 wardrobes. And it's full height with shelves and hanging space above. Loads of room. And there's the pièce de résistance, the large transverse double bed. Unusually, because this van is so wide, this isn't one that retracts during the day to help you get around the foot of it, because actually there's a decent amount of room. Yet it's still well over 6 feet long, and that translates to a good amount of storage space beneath. It doesn't lift up in one piece like in many British vans, but in 2, with gas struts on either side, although some of that storage space is taken up by the table, which is housed in a slot there. There is, however, external access to both that space and indeed the one under the front sofas. People who spend a lot of time in the van will appreciate this dressing area too. There's a good sized cupboard for all your lotions and potions and a huge mirror above. Moving further back, we've got the second of those 3 wardrobes, which is a little bit narrower and is only shelved with no hanging space. But don't worry, because there is an extra hanging rail in the one in the bathroom, which on production vans will have a sliding door rather than this domestic style unit. It's a shame this shower unit hasn't got any shelves in it, but otherwise it's hard to complain. It's fully lined and it's a decent size too. In fact, the whole bathroom's a pretty good size. There's plenty of room for changing, and of course there's that 3rd wardrobe, which is big as well. We've got a hanging rail at the top and some shelves for your towels beneath. Against the back wall there's a really nice vanity unit with a moulded sink, a big mirror with a cabinet behind and another cabinet beneath. Unlike most British vans, this van has a Dometic loo and above it a smoked window. The Star Class is clearly aimed at British buyers and their conservative tastes, but it does still have a few quirks, such as the fact that it sits on a BPW chassis rather than the more familiar Alco of most British vans. It's also not a cheap thing, at knocking on 30,000 quid in 690 form. That said, this is always likely to be a niche model, and there's always going to be buyers who appreciate its sense of style and Germanic quality. Well, I'm thinking of putting a deposit down on this van, but what am I going to use to tow it with? Motty, it's over to you.
Ford isn't the first brand that springs to mind when you think of 4x4s, but a surprising number of its models are available with 4-wheel drive. If you want a full-on SUV with a Ford badge, then the Edge sits at the top of the range. In the UK, it's available with a choice of 2-litre diesel engines. We're driving the more powerful 210 PS model. We've matched the Ford to a Swift Conqueror 645 with a mass in running order of 1615 kilograms. That's an 83% match for the Edge. Despite having 207 bhp and 332 pounds-feet of torque, the Ford doesn't feel all that quick, as the gearbox tends to hold on to a high gear unless you have a really heavy right foot. In sport mode the gearbox is more responsive, and the Edge took a respectable 11.8 seconds to pull the Swift from 30 to 60 miles per hour. It may not be the quickest tow car, but it is a very relaxing one to travel in. Our titanium spec test car has acoustic side glass and a feature called active noise control. Now that works rather like noise cancelling headphones, emitting sound waves which counteract any unwanted sounds. Together these features help make the cabin very hushed at speed. The Edge is stable as well as quiet on the motorway. It feels unshakable at 60 miles per hour and seems unfazed by crosswinds or overtaking HGVs and coaches. The big Ford wasn't quite so comfortable in our lane change test though, leaning heavily on its outside tyres with some pushing and shoving from the caravan. With or without a caravan in tow, we've come to expect an entertaining drive from Ford. However, the Edge doesn't feel particularly agile or engaging. You're always aware of its size and weight. Those generous dimensions pay off inside the car with plenty of passenger space. Rear legroom is particularly impressive, and there's lots of luggage room too. However, while the cabin feels well screwed together, the finish is rather ordinary compared with that of an Audi Q5 or a BMW X3. What's more, the Edge is strictly a 5-seater, whereas rivals like the Hyundai Santa Fe and Kia Sorento offer room for 7. The Edge is a stable tow car and there's plenty of space for passengers and luggage, but with a price tag of over £35,000, it's not short of stiff competition. It's hard to think of any one area in which the Ford is better than its rivals. So, it's a capable tow car, but not a class-leading one.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this week, but we'll be back next week with more great tow cars, caravans and site reviews. In the meantime, you can keep up with us on Twitter or Facebook or via our website. And don't forget that Niall Hampton will be here in a few minutes with a brand new series of Practical Motorhome TV. Now while you wait for him, I'm going to brush up on my towing.
Okay then Alistair, let's go.
Truma, makers of the combi heater and iNet system, are proud to sponsor Practical Caravan TV.